Hello, everyone. It's Phil Jones, and joining me is Cam Valentine and Frederic, joining us from Hong Kong. What's up, Dirty? So,
Dirty.
so today we're going to be talking about building great budget hi-fi systems. So, Frederic, how are you?
I'm good. It's good. It's a long weekend. It's Friday here in APEC, 9 a.m. in the morning. It's very humid. I don't want to go outside, so I want to join you guys.
Yes, the evening here. It's the
Uh,
morning. It's the morning for him. So, we talk about this a lot in the office, Cam. And one of the things that we always talk about is people always come to us to our desks and say, "Hey, I want to get into this hi-fi thing or build a nice system. What should I buy?" And it always comes down to it depends.
yeah, absolutely. There's no one system fits all.
Exactly. So what I did was I sat down and I tried to work with Frederick as well as Cam to kind of come up with some ideas for a hi-fi system. But before we even get into building a budget or a great hi-fi system on a budget, let's define what a hi-fi system is. So Frederick, if I asked you to define what would how would you describe a hi-fi system to someone who was interested in purchasing one?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think hi-fi is not the same as a home theater. Hi-fi is for you got those two kind of um target audiences. You have those who love music, and you have those who watch movies more. So depending on what you prefer, what your tendency is, you would either navigate towards a hi-fi system or a an AVR system. So I would say hi-fi is for music lovers. It's going to be mostly two-channel, two speakers, or two speakers and a subwoofer. Now you can do hi-fi also with multiple speakers in a surround setup. It really depends. But I think today we're focusing on two-channel, so mostly stereo. And then hi-fi is based on, I would say, what kind of technology you're using. Are you more of a analog sources? So do you have like a vinyl player, or are you more like into digital streaming? So you have hi-fi with digital systems or digital source systems and analog systems. And of course, they will sound different. And then the synergy, the goal is to find something where your amplifier matches your speakers, right?
Exactly. So, Cam, I'm going to throw that question at you.
Uh-oh.
If I said hi-fi and like we have hi-fi systems here that cost like a
That's true.
$250,000, right? But
Yes.
we also do hi-fi demos with systems that cost a couple of $1,000. What makes those systems hi-fi?
What makes them hi-fi? Well, he already gave the answer.
So he's like, "Don't throw that at me." So,
well, because hi-fi, right? It's high fidelity.
mhm,
So most of the times when someone's thinking of a high fidelity system, it is going to be a two-channel system
mhm,
because they want a high fidelity out of stereo pairing two of their speakers,
mhm,
and that's somebody like he already covered. It's someone who's going to be listening to. Most of the people this day and age are streaming
mhm,
their audio, but there's still a hardcore group of people that want their vinyl,
mhm,
so they may have their turntable hooked up to
mhm,
one of their sources. And then there are some people that it's not for what we're discussing today, but some people want an all-in-one solution to
mhm,
where, well, my hi-fi is also my home theater.
mhm.
So, but we're focusing on two channel today. So hi-fi, I would say it depends on who you talk to. You're going to get a different answer.
Exactly. So the way that I've always thought about hi-fi, is I'm gonna pull a little bit from what Frederick's answer was and what your answer was. So the first thing that Frederick mentioned, it's for music. Hi-fi is normally associated with music lovers. While you may also use that hi-fi system for playing back TV sound or sound from a video source, a lot of it, the main function of it is music, the love of music, right? The next thing that you mentioned, Cam, was fidelity, high fidelity. So I always say there's three things we're trying to convey that I like. I've had stereo systems that are really expensive, but they weren't hi-fi. I've had so what I when I look at hi-fi, I think I try to achieve three goals. Number one, make you feel like either you're there or the artist you love is here, right? And that's having all of the subtle details to make them feel like they're there. The person images so it floats in the middle of the room and the guitar is to the left and the piano's to the right and I can hear the chair creak. All those little details to make it feel like that person's in your space. Or some of the tracks we play, it's inside of a jazz club and the tinkling of glasses and the size of the room, all of those things. So you feel like you're there. And then the last thing that matters the most to me is the ability to convey emotion. When you play, when that voice goes off and it's someone singing a love song, you should feel something. It should pull your heartstrings. And a lot of times when I do demos, we'll play the song a million times and we'll move speakers around and adjust them until all of a sudden you go, oh, it gets you in your heart. And you go, now it's set up properly. Now it's hi-fi. So it doesn't mean you have to buy really expensive equipment. It doesn't mean you have to have floor standing speakers or all of that. It's just the fact is, does it provide the detail to make you feel like you're there or they're here? And does it give you some emotional response? Happy, sad, all of those things. To me, that's how I define hi-fi. Anything else you want to add to that, Frederic?
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much everything you say there. The main goal of all the brands that we're selling is to play the music as the artist intends and for you to get that emotional feel. So like you said, if I sit down in my listening space, which is also my home theater space, and I play a piece of music and I can really feel, I get goosebumps, then you actually have achieved the way the artist meant to convey something through the music.
Yep. And many of us, Cam and myself, also have systems that sound great for music, but can also be used for multi-channel. But today we wanted to think of it as, I want to get into a good 2-channel system or something to play music in an office, a den, an apartment, or my new house. And I don't have a massive amount of money, but I do want to get high performance. Now, at Massimo, we have a huge amount of brands. So we have Nautilus speakers that are like $100,000, like over $100,000. The product behind Frederic, the 10 series, the amp and the network player, you're talking over 20,000 US, right? That's great product, but we can also do really great things on a budget. So what we have in front of us is several different things that you can use to build a good sounding little hi-fi system. And what we're going to start with is trying to keep the budget under $2,000. And so we're looking at systems that range between 900 US to 2,000 US. And I think the way that I want to do it is basically, I'm gonna challenge everybody out there. I want you to get a piece of paper or maybe grab your phone and go to the notes. And we're going to give you 6 questions. And from those 6 questions, I want you to answer yes or no. And based on those questions, it will help guide you to the proper pieces that maybe you want to add to your system. We have lots of brands, but when we talk about great sound at an approachable price, the best combinations that I believe seems to be the Denon and the Polk combination, because it allows you get a lot of bang for your buck that way. So most of these packages we're going to be talking about are going to be focused on Denon electronics and Polk speakers, and that's why we picked it, because it seems to work best for that. So get a piece of paper, and we're going to look at 6 questions, and then based on those 6 questions, we'll look at how you answer those questions to determine what is the best solution for you. So let's bring up the questions there, producer Nick. So I thought about this and said, okay, these are 6 really basic questions that you should ask yourself when you're thinking about buying a hi-fi system. The first thing, do you want to stream high-res music? We know that turntables are really popular, but as Cam mentioned, hi-fi, when it comes to high-res music, services like Tidal and Spotify and things like that are becoming the de facto way that people access the music content. So that's the question first, yes or no. The next one is, do you want to connect a turntable to it? And the interesting thing about that is turntables are really starting to grow. I think Frederick, if you think about it, I've heard that there's growth in the turntable market where the CD market and the Blu-ray market is actually shrinking. They said this is the first time in many years that the record has actually exceeded the sales of the CD. So is that how it is in Asia as well?
Yeah, pretty much. I think you have a general trend where vinyl is picking up, and even in Japan, cassettes are they bring them back into the market. So cassette players as an analog source, the smaller version of reel to reel, is becoming popular too. So I think it's a general trend.
Exactly. It's funny. We used to have a reel to reel in our room, didn't as well, didn't we?
Yep.
Which is basically a reel to reel is a giant cassette deck, a cassette
Absolutely.
tape, right? So turntables are growing, right? And many people are buying turntables. The problem is they'll go out and get one of those all-in-one turntables that are, that'll play a record, but it really doesn't do the record justice. So the next question, number 2, is do you want to connect the turntable? The next thing Frederick just brought up, do you want to connect other analog sources? Maybe you do want to connect a CD player. I have hundreds of CDs, and in my office, I would like to be able to play some of those CDs, right? And so I want to connect the turntable and a CD player, and maybe a tape deck, and I don't know, a reel to reel in the future. So I want the ability to connect those older analog sources. Number 4, do you want to play back sound on your TV? A lot of TVs, smart TVs, people can have in there, like in my office cam, I have a TV right below my stereo system. And sometimes when I'm in my office, I turn the TV on and I would like to utilize the TV, play the sound through the TV. In fact, I have several apps, including Spotify Tidal and Amazon Music on my TV. And sometimes I just want to use that as a way of grabbing the song and playing it back. The next thing, number 5, do you want to, it says, what you say?
Yes, YouTube not live is what I'm reading.
Well, actually, one more check of the chat. Hey, Mr. Dirty,
Okay.
actually, I think we may have a different one. So the link that we may have shared may be different than what's actually going live, but we will sort that
Okay.
out in the future. So the next question would be, do you want to play back audio from a video source? And that comes down to things like gaming. So as I mentioned, in my office, I have a TV, but I also have a PlayStation just because I should be working, but I'm playing video games. And sometimes I'm going to want to hear that through the system as well. So do I want to connect maybe a video source, a Roku, an Apple TV, a game system to that system as well? The last one is, do you have any major space constraints? Is the size of the speakers, the size of the box, is that an issue to you? Can you use a traditional sized enclosure AVR, or do you want something more compact that can be easily hidden or tucked away? So those are the 6 questions. Now, Frederick, do you have any other things that you would want to add that we would maybe want to talk about as well, besides these 6 questions to help narrow things down?
Yes, if you live with a significant other, I should say politically corrected, we don't call it wife acceptance factor, but it's not just space constraint. I mean, the person or the partner that you're living with obviously also has a decision. So sometimes you want to hide your equipment, sometimes you want to show off your equipment. So that's also going to play a big role.
Yeah, so that's a big point. You know what I noticed there, the producer Nick? Yes, this is a new feed, and it's different than the one that says building your hi-fi system. So, oh
That
no, no,
explains.
no. So
Oh no, no,
what we
no.
need to do is maybe there's 2 people waiting on the other side. So let's tell them to come over to this side. So we're just being nice to other audience members. So hold on a second. as you learn, people, we are just figuring out this live stream stuff. I can do PowerPoints till I'm blue in the face, but this live streaming is a little bit more complex. So we're getting better. All right. All right. So let's go back to this. So these are the 6 questions. So hopefully those out there have actually put these questions into their oh, he didn't know what's happening. Well, I need to make sure that we schedule this stuff to make sure that guys like know that this is actually happening. So let's talk about these 6 questions, and we're going to break these down. So if you hide the questions, if you look in front of me, we have a wide range of products, right? As I mentioned, there's lots of Denon 2-channel amplifier solutions. So we have a bunch of them here. A Denon DRA 900, a Denon home amp, what's the model number on this guy right here, Cam? The CL, the
Keyol.
The Keyol.
Pronounced Keyol.
Okay. So that is I think it's called the N12.
I think it is.
Yeah.
N12.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah,
also
because the 10
have
is the old one.
what the Denon also makes a integrated amplifier called a PMA. So all 4 of those are stereo solutions. And you can build a system with all of those solutions, with those 4 options, ranging from prices from, as I mentioned, $900 up to over $2,000. Now, we also have some other speakers we're going to talk about. This would be something like an entry-level Polk. This is a Monitor XT. This is the most affordable Polk loudspeaker, but they offer exceptional performance. And then, of course, over near Cam, at the higher end, that is actually a Bowers 607?
707.
707. So that's really expensive. I was going to get a 607,
It's like,
but
how'd that
but
get
we can
here?
talk. How did that get here? But we'll talk about that guy as well as some other ones. So let's go in and look at how you take these questions, and then it helps you sort through different systems. So if you look here, you'll notice that there's a little graph along the bottom. And a little graph along the bottom lists the Denon product that is kind of the anchor of the system. And based on whether you say yes or no on the particular questions, it should guide you to one of the 4 boxes that we actually have here. I got another box hidden down here that we could actually talk about. I want to make sure I don't knock your keys off. So let's look at the first one. So say, for example, I look at this thing and I say, do you want high-res music? Yes, I want to stream. That means you probably want HEOS, because Bluetooth is not going to cut it, right? So you need to, because you want to be able to stream high-res. That's one of the things. So you need something that is HEOS enabled. If you don't know what HEOS is, check out our live stream from the last show. The next question, do you want a turntable? Yes. Well, if you want a turntable, you want to have at least an analog input, but preferably a dedicated phono input. So that way you can use just about any turntable, including one whether it has a phono preamp or not, right? The next one would be, do you want to connect any analog sources, a CD player? Yes, I want to connect a turntable and a CD player. And do you want to connect it to a TV? Why not? I might as well connect it to a TV as well. It's in the room. And then do you want to connect video sources to it? Yes, I want to connect the game system or maybe a Roku or Apple TV. And do you care that it's a little bigger? No, I do not. Well, that leads us to this guy here, which is the DRA 900. So if you look at this unit, you get rid of the slides, this would be kind of the anchor for that particular system. And if I turn it around, I don't make sure I don't mess up my screen, you'll see one of the reasons why it works for all those applications is the number of connections. You have your analog connections, you have your HDMI connections, and you notice that there's antennas on it. That is because it has HEOS enabled as well. So if you're looking for something that is a hub for not only for a hi-fi system, but also to be able to play video, you can do that as well. This is only a stereo piece. This is only 2-channel. So it is an AV receiver, but is a 2-channel AV receiver. We had a conversation today about that, Cam. Remember the
Just
conversation?
about to say that. So when you say AV receiver as in AVR,
Mhm.
can you explain the difference between an AVR and a non-AVR hi-fi piece?
Okay, help me lift this up, Cam.
Oh, gee.
Ah.
Got a little weight to it.
Yep. So if you look at these products, this would be so the first thing is when we talk about hi-fi, you have an amplifier, right? An amplifier just takes the signal and boosts the little signal to a big signal, whether it's a turntable, a CD player, a tape deck, whatever, right? Now, you also need the ability to switch your inputs and adjust your volume. And then you go to something like this, which is an integrated amplifier. So it has the amplifier, plus it also has the ability to adjust your bass and treble, switch your inputs, and adjust your volume, right? As you go into the one below that we were just talking about, the DRA 900, that is a receiver, and the receiver just means it has FM in it or some sort of tuner. In the US, we have AM FM, and then in Europe, you may see DAB. I'm not sure if there's any tuners in Asia. Is there any tuners in Asia, Frederic? I'm not really sure. Most of your stuff is more component, not receiver. There's not very many radio stations anymore, correct?
I think most people are streaming right now, but we still have radio. No more digital radio in most places except Australia. So DAB, digital audio broadcast, that's still prevalent in some countries, but that's like it's slightly phasing out because of the streaming.
Okay, so a receiver just means DAB, AM, FM, but like I said, a lot of times that was because I wanted just a constant stream of music that I didn't have to go get a disc for. I can just put a station on,
Right.
and now you can do that with using streaming. Sometimes people still like FM because a lot of times there's a radio personality that you may want to listen to. Yes, you may be playing, high-end, Adele tracks, but every once in a while you may want to toss on a Howard Stern or some big radio person because you just like the DJs talking. So there is, but even that is
They're
going
on
to
streaming now.
Yeah, they're all streaming now, and they have this thing called podcasting. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, where they
This new
actually
thing.
with this new thing where a couple of guys hide in a closet and do stuff like this. That's kind of taking up the position of the DJs, right?
Yeah.
So a receiver has sort of one. But if we move this down again, so the DRA has all of the inputs you need for the plug-in video sources, all the inputs you need to plug in a variety of analog sources. It has an AM FM tuner, and it has it has 2 channels amplification. I love this piece because the quality of the amplification is as good as a 100-watt per channel or Denon multi-channel piece. But if you're not using more than 2 speakers, why pay the cost premium for having more speakers than what you're going to be using? So if I'm just going to connect it to a nice set of stereo speakers, this is a great product to do. So let's turn this guy around, Cam. Oh, that's why it's good to have Cam here to help me with these because we're so far away from each other. There we go. So if you look here, this would be an example of a nice system that you could actually utilize with this system. So this is a pair of Polk Reserve R200s and the DRA 900. This sounds really, really, really good. As we mentioned, there's different levels of Polk speakers, right? The Reserve utilizes the best tweeter, the best mid range, a higher end crossover, and a higher quality cabinet. And what you end up with is a cleaner sound, better vocals, and more articulate bass. People are shocked at the performance of a pair of R200s, especially for their price point. When you see the fit and finish and you actually hear them, they are quite impressive. So if you think about it, this little combination here would be around $1,500 or $1,550 US. It's a great option. Now we are going to also talk about a floor standing option if you want more, if you want a floor standing speaker or more bass. But we've used these R200s in our hi-fi room, and people are stunned at the bass response that actually come from these. And in many applications, you may not want a larger pair of speakers in your space, or can fit a larger pair of speakers in your space. The other thing that's nice about this receiver is it has a sub out. So if you decide that you want to add more bass, you have the ability to add a subwoofer to this as well. So that is a good thing. Cam's looking for the subwoofer. You okay?
2 sub
Oh,
outs.
those sub outs. Okay. So the other thing would be, say you're trying to save a little bit of money, or you don't need as big of a speaker. There's also something like the Polk Reserve R200s, which are basically R100s, which are basically a smaller driver. Same tweeter, same design, smaller speaker. Actually, by the way, both the R200 and the R100 have won a lot of awards for their sound quality. I think, what's Polk's mantra? Is it
Great sound for all?
Great sound for all. The ability to deliver great sound at prices that are approachable. Now, some people say, well, what about the Bowers? What about the Bowers? The Bowers, if you look at a Bowers speaker, it does have upgraded components and some upgrades to it, but it is going to be a more expensive proposition than the Polk system. So either way, you could have a nice system that would be great for all of your different applications, utilizing the DRA as the heart of the package. So Frederic, anything you want to add?
Yeah, you mentioned Bowers and Polk now. A lot of people say, how much different does a Bowers speaker sound like compared to a Polk speaker? So Polk being an American brand, it's American sound originating, even though the engineers now have evolved the speakers to do a more global voicing, so it appeals to a bigger audience, so we can penetrate in different markets. The British speaker is a little bit more open in terms of mid-range. It's a bit more up front. So if you're the kind of person who wants to have more analytical and love mid-range, specifically in vocals, then you probably tend to like Bowers speakers compared to Polks. Now, I have to say that when I arrived in Hong Kong 30 years ago, when my first job, my first paycheck, I went into a hi-fi store. I'd never heard of Polk audio before. And I asked the guy, I had my CD with me, my favorite CDs, and I asked them, okay, can you set up a couple of speakers, bookshelves and floor standers, and I want to listen to this particular track. And there was one that was standing out, which was a Polk Audio RT16. That was a floor standing speaker in those days. So it really depends on, first of all, your budget, but also what kind of music you're listening to. And a particular speaker will also be more suitable for certain types of music. If you want to listen to pretty much everything, both Bowers and Polk will be excellent speakers to play back, but you will have a preference. You will prefer one over the other, and that's a matter of taste. That's different for everyone.
It's a matter of taste, and as you mentioned too, if you the Bowers speaker, the fit and finish, the cabinetry is nicer because it retails for the engineers at Bowers, because of the price points they're playing at, have the ability to utilize more premium laminates and finishes on the cabinets and things like that. Now, actually, as we go along, I'd like to see if there's any chat. If there's any questions, please put them in the chat, because we're here to talk, people, and hang out with you guys. I do want to show something to you, because the next thing people always ask us is, what about wires? So Cam, can you turn that speaker around, and I'll turn this speaker around. Right.
I got the heavy one.
Of course, I gave him the heavy one.
Yeah, cables do make a big difference. That's true.
Yes, but there's two things that we're going to talk about here. If you look at a speaker, often you will see sometimes just 2 terminals, or sometimes 4 terminals. So that is an actual Bowers, and this guy, oh,
geez, yeah, that's a heavy one.
Is a Polk, right? So you'll notice that both of these, is kind of hard to see, have double. This one has doubles or singles? Singles. So this is a single, this is a single, that is a double, right? What those are normally used for is you can do what's called bi-amping, or by wiring. And the quality cables are important. There's some theoretical and there's lots of arguments about whether you buy wire or you buy wire a pair of speakers. As they get bigger, like a pair of big 801 series, like the one, or 800 series, like the ones behind Frederic, by wiring is and running maybe, or I mean, by amping definitely starts to make more of a difference. But for you as a starting hi-fi person, get yourself a good set of two wires and focus on that first. I'd rather have you take that extra funding and step up on the source you're going to connect to the DRA. Maybe go from a $200 or $300 turntable to a $400 turntable. I think you would get a better experience from that versus spending too much for cables. There is a diminishing return on cables. Eventually you get to the point where spending more money is not going to give you that much of a applicable difference. So Jay's asking about new speakers. Man, I can't tell you I like my job. You know.
William, spill the beans.
So yeah, by the way, this is a good conversation. So William and Jay are asking about maybe in the future, what about powered speakers? We're looking at that as companies for traditional powered speakers, but there are some advantages. Let me move this down to put this down here to utilizing a traditional box, right? And that is expandability and flexibility in the future. If you buy a powered speaker, it's really good because I eliminate this box. The problem is that speaker only has so many inputs you can connect. And if you want to upgrade the amplification, you got to replace the whole thing. Or if I want to update the speaker, you got to replace the whole thing. If you look at a price, a lot of times of a good set of powered speakers, the price of a good set of powered speakers are about the same as a pair of passive speakers and an external box, but you get a lot more expandability and flexibility if you go the old way. So there's advantages to both, but I understand people want the power ones because sometimes you don't want this box in your space. All right. So anything else you want to add, Frederic?
Yeah, there's actually a good question here. Does the material of the speaker affect the sound? And we can already see, we can see the difference already between the Polk and the Bowers speaker.
Yeah.
So
that's a very good question.
Yeah. So what do we have here?
Yeah.
We've got silk dome tweeters. We've got titanium. We've got carbon dome. We have diamond tweeters in the ADO series. There's beryllium tweeters. They all will sound different, of course. And also the cabinet itself, the type of wood that's used, the installation that's inside, the material of the cone of the mid-range and the bass also makes a huge difference. So
yeah, so if we look at this, if we look at these speakers, turn that one. There's a couple of things that you have to we talk about the goal of a hi-fi system is to make you feel like you're there or they're here, or to convey emotion, right? That means you have to be able to accurately reproduce what was in the track. And I always say great sound is like climbing a mountain. There's multiple ways to get up that mountain. Some climbers have more money than others for the equipment that they use to get up the mountain. You know, if you're Bill Gates and you're a billionaire, your trip up Mount Everest is going to be a little better than Cam Valentine's, you know? So
he may be a little more comfortable.
He may be a little more comfortable. His tent's going to be a little nicer, right? So if you look at these things, the first thing is good high frequency. So your tweeter needs to move quite quickly. It needs to be stiff enough not to distort. And you'll see materials, maybe you'll see everything from polypropylene to plastics to beryllium to aluminum. You know, you get into something like the Bowers that are behind Frederic, it's like I'll make the tweeter out of basically an artificial diamond. Why? Because it's stiff and it's light, right? So as you move up, the materials get a little better from the polypropylene. And as you look, the materials go as you go from this one, which is about a $200 speaker, to a $400 speaker, to an $800 speaker. Now you're getting into, composite, like the continuum cones and the higher end materials, which does benefit the sound. And then also the construction of the cabinet. And whether it's veneer or whether it's real wood or veneer, the finishes and things like that. So as you spend more money, you get more performance. What I've always liked about Polk is I always say Polk focuses a lot more on the internals than the external cosmetics. Believe me, this speaker is not unattractive. This is a pretty speaker. But they're not going to, if they have to spend the money on making a fancy box for it or using a better crossover or a better tweeter or developing a new woofer, they're going to do that first, which is why a lot of times their speakers outperform what you would expect for the price point, because their mentality is music first, cosmetics second, and if you're budget limited, you have to make those you have to figure out where do you put your attention. As you get into Bowers, everything first, great appearance and great sound, because I'm playing at a different price point. All right. So that is a very, very, very good question. So somebody's asking, are we going to see longer lifespans on the receiver series moving forward? William, a lot of times when it comes to receivers, a lot of times what makes them dated is things like video and surround sound processing. If you look at something like a DRA, it has HEOs, so as we add new services, that's going to improve, right? The only time is maybe if they go to 16K, right, for video, we would have to maybe replace this, or you get to the point where you're going to run out of sources. What we've noticed is, and Frederic will probably tell you, integrated amplifiers last a very, 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 very long time. Amplifiers last even longer. Why? Because power is power is power. So a 20-year-old super high-end, ultra high quality Marantz amplifier is still coveted, because guess what? It's expensive to do that now. It's like a baby grand piano. The labor goes up, the material quality goes up. So a lot of times it is the technology that makes these receivers, or especially AV receivers, date themselves. When it comes to speakers, it may be advancements in driver technologies or materials and stuff like that, which is why you start hearing differences and why companies like Bowers and Polk are driven to continue to advance, because the engineers test stuff and then learn something new and say, wow, we should have done it that way. Right. So next time they do it that way. Okay. All right. So let's go back and go to the, you got it? Let's go put it down here. So let's go back to our questions. So as we mentioned, that the first one was, the DRA, right? Now, the next one is, if you look at something, if I said, do you want to stream high-res music? You go, yeah, what I'm trying to set up is I'm really getting into this turntable hobby, and I'm more concerned with that. I don't really need to be concerned with streaming. Okay. So you want to connect the turntable? Yes, I do. And when you say yes, you want to be able to connect that turntable to not only a turntable with a phono preamp, but pretty much any turntable that's available. We'll talk about different cartridges later, but you want to be able to connect to a wider range of turntables. And you know what? I want to connect my CD player because I have one, and my buddy just gave me a cassette tape player, or I think I may get into reel-to-reel or whatever those hobbies would be. I want those multiple analog sources. And then I may ask you, do you want to play back a TV? And they go, there's no TV in this room. Right. So if there's no TV in this room, I don't need to connect it to a TV, nor do I need to connect it to any video sources, right? It is a music first, analog music first proposition. And I do not have any major space constraints. So hold on a second. Put that there. You can't see me. I'm hiding myself. Let's move. I'll move this one. We can put it right. No, we'll put that one there. You got it? I'm gonna have him Cam break something. All right. We gonna flip it around? Yeah, we'll flip it around in a second. All right. So that leads us to an integrated amplifier. This is actually a step up from the unit that we were talking about. This is a DRA. I think this is a PMA 900. Yep. But the premise is you're looking for something that is an integrated amplifier. focused on, great. You want to just play it. It's a music first thing. You're not really concerned with video, and you may not be concerned with streaming. If you are concerned with streaming, then you would go to something like the 900, which has all the benefits of the 600 plus more power plus built-in streaming. So let's turn around. Oh my God! There you go. You go that way. That's why I put Cam on that side. So because I'd be throwing my back out. So minus the antennas are the streaming side, an analog proposition, right? So this has 2 channels amplification and a ton of analog connections, including a dedicated phono input. Many people, most people should know this. I'm sure many of you guys know this out there. But if a phonograph has less power, the output of that needle vibrating doesn't generate a lot of signal. So if you plug that phonograph into an input where you would normally plug a CD player, it would play really quiet and you wouldn't be able to hear it. So the phono input has more gain. It's boosted. It's dedicated specifically for a phonograph. And it also has like a ground to make sure there's no hum and things like that. Now, Denon makes several turntables that actually have phono preamps built in, which we'll talk about along the way. But sometimes you may have an older turntable that does not have a phono preamp that you want to utilize, because a lot of times people want vintage records and vintage turntables. And having a dedicated phono preamp means that you have a lot wider range of turntables available. Let me turn this sucker around. So since this is a music first piece, the main thing that's on it, it's pretty simple. It's got a volume knob, an input selector knob, and bass and treble and balance. That's it. If you're looking for digital this and equalization that's not. This is the purest benefit to a pure way of doing it. Hey, Frederic, what's one of the benefits of having such a simple audio path and something like this compared to something like an AVR that has multiple channels and DSP and everything else?
Yeah, so an integrated amplifier, and the one you're showing there, I think, is a PMA 900 that has a DAC in it as well. So you have that additional functionality. Integrated is you have pre-amp, power amp in a single, just like an AVR, but it doesn't do any processing. So you have more circuits that are dedicated for hi-fi sound. So an integrated amplifier is going to technically sound better from a hi-fi point of view. It's going to sound more hi-fi like, high fidelity, compared to an AVR, which gives you the benefits of AVR, video switching and all that sort of stuff. So, and also the signal paths are much cleaner because they have dedicated circuits. They have all that sort of stuff to keep the power really clean, so that then the output to your speakers is going to be very well controlled and easier to drive. So from a hi-fi point of view, if you're more of a music lover and you want just hi-fi sound, I would navigate to integrated amplifiers only and try to steer away from AVRs if, of course, that is if you don't have any video sources that you want to integrate into your system.
Yeah, the straighter, the cleaner the path, the cleaner the sound, and the less likely you are to cause issues. I mean, you will see integrated amplifiers with just an input knob and a volume knob. It won't even have bass and treble on it because they're trying to make the path as straight down as possible. Now, actually, Jay's asking some good questions. Jay, we're going to talk about some of the subwoofers in the future, but yeah, Jay was mentioning that he loved the old HTS Signature series subs. The new ES subs, we're going to do a whole session on subwoofers, and we will show you some charts between the new ones and the old ones and the performance difference and the improvement when it comes to bass response, less distortion and extension, and output is dramatic compared to on the new ES subs that we just launched. And the nice thing about them is their price points are very close to the original HTSs, which I love, by the way. We used to do demos with those all the time. For HTS 12s and a home theater system, it used to be frightening. And I think the ES ones, the new ones, have matched that. So, William, you don't have to throw softball questions, but just be nice. Yeah, you know what? Because he's asking a great question about the universal remote control, and we'll talk about that in another session. But I understand I've been pushing that we need to make it as simple as possible for the average consumer, and most of the time, the people that really need and this type of solution, hi-fi, is pretty straightforward and simple. As we get into multi-channel home theater, that's where, William, we definitely need to come up with a solution to make it easier to control the lights, the TV, the surround sound system, and everything else. And we are working on that. I will say that there's been some advancements with eARC and stuff like that and CEC control to make it a little easier for the average consumer to do it with the single remote control that comes with it. So let's look at some hi-fi solutions that utilize the PMA 600 as the heart of the system. And since we were talking turntable, I could actually add a turntable to this solution and still be under $1,400. So that is a pair of, is that these? No, it's a bigger set than this. This is a 15. So it'd be a bigger version of this speaker called an ES20, which is the largest of the Signature Elite Polk speakers, to the integrated amplifier and a DMP 400 turntable. There's another one called a DMP 450 USB that allows you to do things like, I think, record onto a USB and things like that. But if you don't need that capability, I love this little DMP 400. I actually have one in my house. I think, Cam, you have a white one as well, right?
I have the USB one.
You got the USB one because Cam likes Cam's Mr. Upgrade, right? I have a DMP 400, and that turntable is actually connected to something. It's connected to the PMA anniversary, the 110 series, like a really, really high end integrated amplifier in that solution, and it works really, really well. Now, this is a semi-automatic turntable. And the funny thing is the semi-automatics and the manuals cost more than the automatics. And that is because as you add the automatic features, which adds some simplicity. So if you go out and buy one of those inexpensive turntables, you'll see at, like a clothing store, I can't remember what that clothing store is that actually has them. They're normally fully automatic because you just put a record on and it's just set it and forget it. When you do that, there's things about all those motors and stuff that's moving that needle back and forth and up and down affects the needle's ability, or the tone arm's ability to track the record. So the more manual the turntable gets, the more likely that tone arm is going to accurately, and that cartridge is going to actually accurately track the grooves in the record. So Frederic, anything you want to add to that?
No, it's a beautiful little record player, actually. I got one for my daughter who's living in Japan, and they have small real estate, so to speak. So I actually combined it with something we're going to talk about later, then on home. So the advantage is it has that built-in equalizer, so you can use it with any amplifier that has a line input. It's like you said, semi-automatic, so it will, at the end of the record, lift up, so the needle will come out. And speaking of cartridge, I think this one has an Audio Technica, one of these. So it's actually very good quality cartridge, and it plays beautiful. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yes, and there's ways, by the way, to increase the performance of a turntable like this, and that is you can take the time to upgrade the cartridge. Right?
That's right.
So if you decide you want to upgrade the cartridge, you can do that. So you can start off. This has a good cartridge on it, and but we also, Denon actually makes a lot of really nice cartridges, and you have the ability to upgrade the cartridge. Denon is a big time. Reason why we even are doing this is Denon is pretty committed to the analog. So for example, Frederic and I went to Shirakawa, where they still hand make several Denon phono cartridges. It's like a little 2 or 3 people in a room hand making these cartridges one by one by one. So those are there. So there's a way so you could take this turntable and you could upgrade the turntable by adding the cartridge. One of the other benefits of this turntable is it has a built-in phono preamp. So if you have a amplifier like maybe a Denon Home or the keyhole
The keel. Yeah.
Keel.
or the keel. I'm gonna use the actual model number when we get there. Those have RCA inputs, but you may need to boost the signal, and you can hit a switch on the back, and the turntable will boost the signal itself, or you could turn it off and use the phono preamp in your hi-fi piece. So the cool thing is, when you're utilizing the PMA, you can play or try out the phono input using the phono preamp inside of the integrated versus the phono preamp inside of the turntable, and pick the one that sounds best to you. So lots of flexibility to tune the system. So this system number 2 is the heart of it, as we mentioned, is the PMA 600E, which retails, if you bring the slide back up, for $1,398 for this package. If you decide you want to upgrade, there's another one called a PMA 900, I believe, Frederic, right? And I think
That's
it's
right.
about it's going to be about $400 or $500 more, but that adds US, but that's going to add more power and also the ability to stream. So if you want to stream, it looks just like this. Is the one that I actually have sitting here, and it will give you more power and streaming ability. Now, you can upgrade this system. And so say you want to upgrade this system into something that is utilizing a pair of Bowers. So say you want to move up to a pair of Bowers speakers, get the because you want to utilize a pair of Bowers because you just like the way Bowers sounds. You can do that as well. But the Bowers do cost more than the Signature. So you're looking at about a $500 difference. Now, I believe there's also actually, yeah. If you want to go up a little higher, you can actually go up to something that retails for around $2,100. So there's a million different speakers. I've heard the PMA 600 on a pair of monitors. We did that. It sounds amazing. You can go to a pair of Signatures. You can go to a pair of Legends. Reserves, or you can go up to a pair of Bowers. So you can easily build a system starting at under $900 and work your way up to $2,000, utilizing something like a PMA as the heart of your system. All right. So actually, let's go back to our questions real quick. So if you go back to our questions, you'll see that and continue down the list, right? So say you go, Phil, I do launch streaming. I love streaming, right? And yeah, I wouldn't mind connecting. Maybe I will be considering connecting a phonograph to this. And yes, the phono is something like a DP400, and it has a phono preamp. And you know what? I'm not really going to connect a CD player to it or another source. It's probably just going to be the turntable or maybe one analog source, a CD player, right? And then you may say, well, yes, I do want to connect it to my TV. And if all my sources are connected to my TV, and I would like to hear that game system or that Roku or that Apple TV that's connected to my TV played back through my Denon Home, but it's got to be small because I don't have a lot of room for a big product. I want to be able to tuck it away. That is where the Denon Home piece here comes into, move this out of the way, move that out of the way, this guy here. So that's where this little guy, which I absolutely love, comes into. So this is a Denon Home amp. And the Denon Home amp here, if you look here, it has, it's mostly a streaming device. This is, we like to call it a hi-fi amplifier, a compact hi-fi amplifier with streaming capabilities. So all Denon amplifiers, including this unit here, are tuned by the Soundmaster. So the same Soundmaster that tunes the high-end AVRs and the high-end amplifiers also tune these units as well. This is designed to be a streaming first device, but it has an ARC input, an eARC input. So if you have streaming services built into your TV, or you want to play back audio from your TV, or maybe you have your game system or a Apple TV plugged into your TV, that sound from those sources can be played back through this device. And of course, it has one set of analog inputs on the back. So if you want to be able to plug in a single analog source, you could actually do that. But it's incredibly compact. If you're trying not to have a lot of take up a lot of space in a home, by the time you buy this and a pair of really nice Polk speakers, it probably costs less or the same as most powered speakers, and you have a lot more power and a lot more flexibility in the future to use those speakers or upgrade those speakers. We have actually used this little amplifier when it first came out, and we connected it to a pair of 702 S3s, the big Bowers towers, 700 series towers, and we were absolutely shocked at the performance that we got from this little unit. In fact, so if you're looking at something like maybe a pair of 700 series, or maybe even you can use a big set of Polk, R600s, R700s.
Sure.
This is a good, true 100 watts per channel, right? This uses a switching amplifier. This uses a traditional Class AB amplifier. Now, we can have a whole nother session later about the difference between analog Class AB amplification and switching, but this thing sounds incredibly good and it's incredibly compact, and it produces a lot of output from an itty bitty package. All right. So if we were looking at using this as the heart of the system, this is like pretty much one of my favorites. We have this actually set up in the hi-fi room very, very often, right? And when we play this, people are absolutely shocked at how good this system actually sounds. It sounds absolutely amazing when it comes to the amount of bass, the output, the mid-range, everything about it sounds really, really, really good. And people are quite surprised that you can get this performance for just $1,500 from two things that are not very, very big. And oh, by the way, I think it was William that was talking about subwoofers. You add a little Polk, the new Polk ES8 or ES10 to this system, and you'd probably be right around $2,000. And because the unit also has, the Den-Home amp also has a sub out. So if you want it to sound gigantic and you want great sound, that is an amazing combination that will fit just about anywhere. So what do you think about that, Cam? You've heard this thing a million times, right?
Yes, 1,000,001 times. That setup is a fan favorite. Actually, you do the Den-Home amp with the reserve speakers. That's a fan favorite. That's why we typically have it running in our hi-fi room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's to show people that you don't have to spend and by the way, in that hi-fi room, most of the time, there's also $100,000 801 signature Marantz Model 10 system in there, and we just want to show people that while they cannot match that performance,
Right.
a lot of that essence, like you talk about the emotion and the ability to make you feel like you're someplace else or there's a person in the room, this system can actually do that. Now, of course, you can also bring it down by, instead of using the R200s, use the R100s. And these actually, I was quite impressed with these. They're a pretty small set of speakers that will work great in an apartment or a small place and do a really, really, really good job. All right. And of course, you can always upgrade to something like the Bowers. So Frederic, what's been the response for these units actually in the APAC?
In APAC, it's been very successful because, like I said, a lot of countries in APAC don't have big houses. They have limitations in terms of space. So this is very compact. It even has a Visa mount. You can put it behind a TV. You can put it behind a monitor and make a small desktop setup, so to speak. And it's very powerful, 2 times 100 watt in such a small form factor with all the additional functionality you get. It's pretty good. It's very popular. And also because it's small, it has very short signal path. And also there is a misconception thinking this is a digital amplifier. It's Class D. Yes, it is, but it doesn't sound like that at all. Our sound master has done very good job in fine-tuning and filtering and tweaking the components inside to get that nice, very detailed, good performance sound from such a small form factor. So very popular.
Now, the next one was Jay said he loved the Legends. So do I. The best way to think of a pair of Legends compared to a pair of Reserves, I use this analogy all the time, is think of the drivers in a Reserve and a Legend are the same. The tweeter and the mid bass drivers are the same. The crossover on a Legend has some higher quality components, and then the cabinet is a little nicer. So the analogy I use is think of a Reserve as a really, really nice couch covered in fabric. And the Legend is the same frame, the same springs, the same foam, maybe a little upgrade on the foam,
Gotcha.
a little double padding with leather on top. So but those finishes are what drives the price up. And Jay said, hey, he would be willing to pay more for the fit and finish, and that's one of those things that we battle because we're trying to take each of our brands and have them fit the needs of certain customers at certain price points. And we looked at where Polk lived and where Bowers lived and said, as we start getting there, by the time you get into that fit and finish conversation, a lot of times we're fighting against our own brands.
Right.
So we said, what does Polk do best? Polk does ultra high quality sound at an incredibly good price, So let's just focus on that as much as possible. And then eventually, maybe if I've seen some new finishes. I can't tell you if they're ever going to come out, but I've seen some beautiful new finishes that they're looking at. And maybe you may see something like that. I think we have one, Frederic, called was it the anniversary series, R200? And that finish is much nicer. And it has some upgraded appearance compared to the standard, right?
That's right. And some components in the crossover that have been upgraded as well. But driver-wise, it's pretty much the same. It's just an upgraded version, limited edition. That's right.
Yeah. And Bodie, okay, here's another one. Bodie's asking about, it'd be cool if the Denon Home amp if they made a 5.1. We used to make a unit back, and remember the Helios surround piece? That was basically a 5-channel surround piece for that type of situation where you could utilize it as a 5-channel solution. So I can see like a 5.1 of this. The big thing that we have to consider is as we get into 5.1, people want to connect multiple sources. And if you look at the back of this thing, you could people it has the e-arc. So yes, you can use your TV, but often somebody may also want to, plug their disc player, their Blu-ray player or their Roku or their game system directly into that 5.1.
Yeah.
And we run out of real estate quite rapidly. Now and this unit would get bigger. Now it wouldn't be as big as a traditional 5-channel AVR, but it would be a bigger piece. But there's always opportunities to do. We're always looking for ways to evolve our Denon Home lineup. Remember, a year ago we didn't have an amp; we had speakers, and now we have an amp in the lineup already as well. The other thing I love about this piece is we mentioned that you can add a subwoofer to it. So, say you put a Polk ES8 on it, you can also use the wireless Denon Home sub with this.
Sure can.
Which is what I had in my office. I have this little guy with a pair of the smallest Bowers speakers possible with a wireless Denon Home sub, and it makes the most amazing like near field desktop system. It sounds like a big full blown hi-fi system sitting on my desk. So that's another thing that you could never do with something like this.
Right.
On a desk, but you can do with something like that. All right. So great systems. So here's an example of, like we talked about, if you looked at the Denon Home, you could start off with something like this. This was an upgrade where you would upgrade to the Bowers and Wilkins speakers, but I kind of like this one. Utilize the Polk Reserve speakers, and then I spelled elite wrong, elite, but that should be elite. So this is like I said, like Jay was, or I think somebody was asking about the HTS sub replacements. This is one of those new subs. Those are called the ES subs, and the Signature Elite ES. So this is the 8. There's an 8, a 10, and a 12, and all of these, the 8 and the 12 and the 10 and the 12 far exceed the HTSs. And I don't think there was an 8-inch HTS. I just think they started at 10 and 12. I don't think there was an 8. So now you actually have more. And if you look at the price points, they're still very, very, very good. All right. So I love this system. This is the other one that we do a lot in that room. But what we use instead of the Signature Elite sub is we use the oh, it's so funny. We use the Den and Home sub.
Yeah.
And then we play it and people go, oh, those Bowers, those 801 sound great. We're not playing those. We're just playing this. And people are like, what? They have to walk up to it and look at it. Yeah. Now, if you really sat down and listened to it, yes, the Bowers have more articulation and the imaging and the sound staging is deeper. Right. But when we first fire up something like a big dance track, people assume it's the big system, not this little system here. So that's kind of a cool one. All right. So there is one more that I wanted to bring up. So we were talking about systems before, $1,800 and $1,400 and $2,000. But what's the bare minimum that you could actually do something, a nice hi-fi system? This is something that you could use as a bare minimum. So if you think about this, I've seen kids, and I don't want to mention the brand, but all my daughter's friends have records, right? And they all have these little boxes that are about this big. You put the record in, it's got the little speakers on it, and it plays back the record. They paid like $300 for it. And it sounds like this. It's like the record's playing and it sounds like, and I'm like, that's not what a record should sound like. So if you're looking for your first system, or you want to buy your daughter or your child a system, and you want them to understand what good sound is, think of this as your hi-fi starter kit. All right. So this is a great hi-fi starter kit. To go up a little bit more, if they want the streaming, then you would go up to the unit I have here, which is or swap in a DRA. So if you swap in a DRA to this system, it would go up about $300. So, but this just shows you that you can start off at under $900 and have a very good sounding system that sounds much better than many sound bars and way better than those all-in-one turntables that people are buying records to play on. So do your records a little bit of justice and do this. Oh, Jay says amp blue. We'll talk about. Oh, poor Jay. But okay, so moving on to so we talked about these systems, but there's also a few more. This guy is something that Cam turned me on to. So let me put this down. So this is called what the full name of it is a CE. I'm not even gonna lift it because it's too heavy. Put it over here. So this is how do you say it?
Keyol. So think of key like a key, and then OOL, OOL, and it means a cool mini hi-fi system that works great in any home.
Yes. So these systems I think Frederic in the EU in the APAC, this system actually is bundled with a pair of speakers, correct? I've seen
you can have it. Yes, it's with or without. It comes both as a standalone unit, so you can mix and match with whatever speaker you have, or if you already have a set, or it also comes in a set with the suggested speakers from Denon themselves.
Okay, so one of the nice things about this unit is it has your tuner, right? So if you want to do that, it has your inputs, and it has a disc player built in. So if you want to go in and utilize a disc, you can actually do that. If I turn it around, like I said, you have a 2 sets of analog inputs, 1 phono input, 1 regular RC. I think the phono input is just does the phono input have a phono preamp, or is it just a basic? I think it's a basic. I can't remember.
No, it's a dedicated. It's moving
Okay, so you got a
magnet. You
dedicated
don't have
phono
moving
input.
magnet, moving coil. Yes, it's
Okay, so
dedicated though.
okay, so you got a dedicated phono input. You got another input for like another analog source, even though this already has a CD player in it.
Right.
Then you also have your HEOS, and the nice thing is moving the difference between something like this. Let's talk about the difference between getting something like this piece here and this piece here. The Denon Home amp has more power. Period. It'll drive a bigger set of speakers, right? But it doesn't have a CD player built in. It doesn't have AM/FM built in. It doesn't have the inputs of the other unit. And if you don't want to, this one, the way you control it, mostly it has buttons for volume up and volume down. You can double click the play button to advance songs. But if you really want to control it, you use your phone versus something like this, what actually has more controls on the top. And does it come with a remote? I believe it comes.
It comes with a remote, yes.
And it has a remote control. Actually, producer Nick actually owns this piece. So
Me too.
And so does Cam. And this is
office.
what I had in my desk for a long time, in my office, and before I went to this unit, just because I could get a little smaller, and most of the time I am just playing streaming music, and I wasn't using the disc. So this is another great example, if you bring the slide back up, of a little system that you could use to do this. And by the way, this also has a subwoofer out. So you could easily toss a subwoofer on this unit as well. I used a little DT for a while, and now I'd probably do something like the little ES8 or a little tiny, the smallest sub you can. And it makes for a beautiful office or small apartment or desktop type solution. So great pieces. All right. Now, some other ones you want to cover, because time is rolling today.
Oh yeah.
So some of the systems we talked about, most of the ones we were talking about were bookshelves, right? But you can also switch over. And the question is, I am not space constrained, and I want a bigger speaker. There are some really good Polk speakers, and the value price wise is amazing. We just did a home Cam and I just went to this thing called the Military Makeover, and we actually put in a little theater system in this military veteran's home, and it was centered around a Denon X3800 and these signature ES towers, and it sounded ridiculous. It sounded amazing. It was a multi-channel piece, 20s in the back, the small bookshelves in the back, these in the front, the center channel that goes with it, and 2 of the new ES8 subwoofers, and it was really good. Right? So $1,500 if you want a floor standing speaker. You can even move up to the bigger guys. These guys crush for the price. Under $2,000. So you can show that if you have room for a bigger speaker, this is a great solution.
Yes.
But then you also have to factor in, do I want a bookshelf and subwoofer or a floor standing set of speakers? So Frederic, if it was you, would you go with the floor standers or the smaller bookshelves and a subwoofer?
That's a very good question. I'm a bass head, so I like my extension in the low energy. So I would definitely go with floor standards. And that coincidentally, when I told you just about my first set of speakers that I bought, it was a floor standard. No way around. But wife likes it or not.
Yeah. So floor standing speakers all together with all the bass, like you see these ones in this picture, these types of speakers, you get a better connection between the bass, the mid bass, and the high frequencies. It blends better because it's all been designed to blend together, right? A lot of times when you buy a satellite pair of speakers, a small pair of bookshelves, and a subwoofer, getting them to blend seamlessly can be a challenge. Sure. That is the con of having a pair of satellites and a subwoofer versus a pair of floor standers. The pros of having a pair of satellite speakers over and a subwoofer over floor standers is sometimes where the mid-range and the high frequencies sound good is not where the bass sounds the best. And being able to move the subwoofer around and put the subwoofer where the bass is the best in the room and is a good proposition. The other thing too is the demand on your amplifier is less.
Okay.
Because now the heavy load of driving the bass is now sent to the subwoofer, and now your amplifier can just focus on the bookshelves. All right. So these are just some other examples. So here's another, great value system that you could end up with a nice set of floor standers, a nice set of integrated amplifier, and a turntable, a good turntable for right around $1,600. Now, I will tell you, and Cam can tell you that we have cables and power conditioners, that cost more than that. I have seen cable elevation devices that they use to elevate the cables off of the floor that cost more than $1,600.
Yes.
So you don't have to get carried away to have good hi-fi. It's just using quality components. So here's right at $2,000. This would be a great solution. All right. So, and then of course you can even use the Denon home amp as your main part. Or by the way, if you go back to the pitch, any of these devices will drive a pair. I would say maybe the N12 would be something that I would probably stick based on its power to a pair of nice bookshelves. But a lot of the other products that we've shown you today would have no problems driving a pair of floor standing speakers. All right. So, there was a couple more things that Frederic brought up before I let you guys go.
Yeah.
This is another option that Frederic had mentioned that he put in here that I thought, oh wow, that's a good idea. You mentioned you did this for your daughter. So talk about this real quick.
Yeah, so space is an issue. There's a small little cabinet in her flat that serves to decorate. She started doing vinyl a year ago, and she asked me on Amazon, which one would you recommend? That's probably something you should steer away from. The problem with a lot of these very cheap turntables is you can tell if the vinyl disc itself is going to be larger than the device that it's playing on, like the so-called overhang. Definitely not a good idea. So try and stick with something that has a good platter.
Mm-hmm.
The advantages of the DP400 that it has a line, the equalizer, so you can give a line output. And then the 350 or the 250, Denon home speaker is a standalone HEOS speaker that does streaming and all that. But if you want to play vinyl, you use the auxiliary input, which is a line level input. And there you go. You have got something very straightforward. There are some turntables that have Bluetooth. You could even use that Bluetooth streaming, but then there's a bit more delay. I think this is a very nice setup for those who do not have the space. Mind you, the 350 and the 250 are actually stereo speakers in a single cabinet. So the advantage is you've got nice stereo imaging from a single cabinet. So you save the footprint, so to speak. But you've got a nice setup that has plenty of bass. The only thing you have to be careful is not to put the DP400 too close to the 350, because that's something everyone who plays vinyl knows, that if you put a turntable too close to the speaker, you may have some feedback, some rumble feedback coming in. But that's the way you set it up. So that's pretty straightforward. I think it's a nice mini system, small footprint, great sound.
And then eventually, if you decide you want to go to a more traditional amplifier and speakers, you can now use this for a second room in your home.
That's right.
And then there's
There
a couple
goes your
of other
upgrade
ones
path,
that we've talked about. We've done this as well. I have this setup is actually in my dining room. I actually have you can stereo pair these two units, and you can have one act as a dedicated left and one act as a dedicated right. So if you don't want to have the black box in the room, you can actually use this as a stereo system, and it images between the two speakers. The voice is in the middle, has great bass, everything about it, high res playback, very, very cool. In addition to that, if you wanted to, you could add a subwoofer to either a pair. You can have a like something like a pair of two 150s or two 250s with a subwoofer. I think downstairs we have.
We have that here in the guest cafe.
Yeah, I think it's two 250s.
Two 250s with the Denon home subwoofer.
And we do that demo for people all the time, and that's a great solution for someone who's looking for big sound, and they do mainly streaming, and it's a great solution for someone who is space limited. All right, so I think that's going to be it for the slides. So it's amazing how quickly
Yeah.
90 minutes go, especially if you're a little late getting started.
I was about to say, we did have some delays.
Okay. Yeah. So if you guys have any more feedback or curious, I'd love to know in the chat what were your scores? Which system did you like the best, and which one would you gravitate towards if you had under $2,000? Or do you have other options? The target is under 2,000. If you're really good, under 1,500, and if you're the man or the woman, under 1,000. All right. So let's see what you guys have to do. Oh, by the way, if you're interested in any of the products that we've talked about today, we're going to make sure that we put them the links into the description below. And so Cam, thank you for coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Frederic, thank you for coming as well.
Happy to be here.
Okay, so we will continue to do these live streams, and we'll along the way, and we have some other ones planned. I believe the next one is on. Yeah, we're going to be talking about high performance wireless speakers, where we're going to talk about the ultimate of our wireless single cabinet hi-fi speaker, which is the Horizon and Grand Horizon. And we'll bring one here and show you how it works and go through the applications and talk about why it was built and show you we'll bring one in without the cover on it, so we can talk about all the details about it, as well as the Denon home speakers and some of our other wireless offerings, including maybe we'll bring a pair of Bowers Formation duos in here as well to talk about those. All right. Please make sure that you like and subscribe to our channel. So and make sure that you tell your friends about our live stream so we can grow our audience. So I'd like to thank my team, the group, for putting this together, including Nick, who's in the shadows, switching cameras and everything else. And if you want to learn more about the products, check out the descriptions in the bottom, or check out polkaudio.com, denon.com, bowersandwilkins.com, and while you're at it, marantz.com and definitivetechnology.com if you're looking for a larger set of floor standards. So take care, everyone, and we will talk to you soon.